You know that moment when someone asks, maybe with a bit of concern, maybe something else, why are you being so quiet?
Hmm.
It's a question, well, a lot of us have heard, and it often comes with these unspoken assumptions packed inside.
Yeah, definitely.
But what if being quiet isn't, about being shy
Yeah.
or switched off? What if it's actually like a hidden strength,
Hmm.
a kind of superpower?
That's exactly what we're getting into today. We're doing a deep dive based on the source you suggested, quiet power, exploring that often hidden potential of introversion.
Right. This book is really fascinating. It looks at how those of us who are maybe naturally quieter can, well, really thrive,
Mm.
and how everyone really can understand and appreciate this side of personality better.
Hmm.
So our mission, you could say, for this deep dive is to pull out the key ideas, those real aha moments, stuff that can help you understand your own quiet side or maybe the quiet people in your life.
And to really see the value they bring, especially in a world that, let's be honest, often seems to reward the loudest person in the room.
Exactly. We want to get those insights without making it, overwhelming. Find those surprising facts, different angles.
So to do that, we'll kick off by sort of unpacking some common misunderstandings about introversion, busting some myths.
Okay.
Then we'll shine a light on its strengths, the surprising ones, in different parts of life, school, friendships, even leadership, personal stuff too.
Yeah. And finally,
And finally, we'll touch on some practical ways for quieter folks to flourish, even when the world isn't always, set up for them.
okay, so let's dive right into that question.
Hmm.
Why are you being so quiet? It really hits home for a lot of introverts, doesn't it?
It really does. And Quiet Power points out that even if the person asking means, well, maybe a friend just checking in,
Right.
it can still feel like it carries this assumption, like being quiet is weird
Yeah.
or not normal.
Yeah, like it needs explaining.
What's really useful, I think, is how the book immediately draws a line between introversion and shyness. They are not the same thing.
Super important distinction.
Yeah. Introversion, basically, it's about your energy. Introverts tend to recharge by spending time alone, reflecting.
Okay.
Shyness, though, that comes from a fear of being judged socially, worrying about what people think.
Right. And you can mix and match, can't you? Like the book mentions shy extrovert.
Exactly. Or introverts who are totally fine socially, they just don't get energized by being around crowds all the time. They might actually find it draining after a while.
That makes so much sense. And the book even talks about some maybe unexpected upsides to shyness.
It does. Some research suggests shy kids often end up with, deeper, more loyal friendships. They tend to be more conscientious, too.
Mhm.
Empathetic, creative, even.
And both shy people and introverts are often really good listeners,
Yeah.
which it kind of figures, right?
It totally figures. I mean, if you're a good listener, you're probably quite observant, too. The two often go hand in hand.
Mhm.
When you're not so focused on, broadcasting outwards, you're naturally taking more in, processing it.
But then there's this pressure.
Mm.
The book calls it the extrovert ideal. This idea in society maybe that being outgoing and assertive and, well, loud is better.
Yeah, it's like an overvaluation of those traits.
You see it everywhere, don't you? In
Mhm.
schools, work. This push to be the one talking in meetings, the one working the room at parties, just to seem, I don't know, successful or even just normal.
Definitely.
I absolutely remember feeling that myself. School dances, big parties,
Right.
feeling like I should be having this amazing outgoing time, but
Yeah.
actually just wanting to find a quiet corner.
That extrovert ideal, it really does shape things, doesn't it? How we value people, what we expect.
Yeah.
And it can make quieter people feel like they need to put on an act or that something's wrong with them if they don't naturally fit that mold. What's really interesting, though, is Quiet Power gives examples of people who seem super extroverted on the surface: actors, politicians, business leaders, athletes,
Mm-hmm.
who actually identify as introverts. It just completely blows up that surface assumption about who can succeed in those kinds of roles.
Okay, so that kind of debunks some myths. Now let's get into the strengths. The stuff introverts often bring to the table that gets overlooked.
Right, where the power part comes in.
One of the first things the book mentions is this ability for really deep thinking. I love this quote. There's a word for people who are in their heads too much. Thinkers.
Huh, that's brilliant. And so true. It captures a core strength perfectly. Introverts often just spend more time with their own thoughts, really mulling things over before they speak or act.
Processing things more deeply.
Exactly. And that depth, that thoughtfulness, it can lead to really profound insights, more considered opinions when they do share them.
And that connects to another point the book makes about solitude and creativity.
Mm-hmm. The idea that most great ideas spring from solitude.
Yeah. Because the example of Steve Wozniak, right, co-founder of Apple, inventing the first Apple computer mostly on his own, working away quietly.
It's a perfect example. That focused, uninterrupted time lets your mind connect things in new ways. You need that space away from constant input, constant noise, for real originality to spark.
The book also talks about intense focus and keen observation as introvert strengths.
Yeah, like the story of Misty Copeland, the ballerina.
Right. She started ballet relatively late, but her quiet nature apparently helped her focus intensely on learning really complex stuff.
Exactly. And there was another story about Lucy in a magazine meeting.
Oh, yeah, she didn't say much, but she noticed the team wasn't really feeling the new design, even though they were kind of nodding along. She picked up on the vibe, the nonverbal stuff.
That's observation. And we see it again with Davis, the class president example, using his quiet observation skills to figure out what students actually needed, not just guessing.
It's that quiet attentiveness, isn't it? Picking up on nuances others might miss because they're busy talking or projecting.
Absorbing details, reading the room, noticing the unspoken stuff.
And then, the big one perhaps, listening skills.
Yes. Natural listeners, the book calls them.
They use questions not just to, like, fill the silence, but to genuinely get what someone else is saying.
Yeah.
To learn.
Right. It mentions Ira Glass from This American Life. He's not necessarily loud or flashy,
No.
but his skill is in the listening, the insightful questions. That's what makes those stories so compelling.
So you've got deep thinking, creativity from solitude, sharp observation, great listening. They all sort of feed into each other, don't they?
They really do. It creates this powerful inner resource that introverts can tap into.
Okay, so we see the strengths. But how does this actually work out in, say, different environments? Let's start with school, class participation.
Yeah.
That could be tough.
Oh, yeah. Big one. The book talks about that discomfort many introverts feel. You know, the fear of being wrong or saying something pointless.
Or just needing that extra beat to formulate your thoughts properly.
Exactly. Or simply not wanting all eyes on you. That spotlight feeling.
That's a very real thing. The pressure to jump in immediately in a big group discussion can feel totally counterintuitive if you're someone who needs to process things first.
You might have brilliant ideas, but just hesitate to throw them out there in that kind of free-for-all.
But quiet power does give some tips, right?
Yeah.
Strategies for handling it.
Yeah, things like prepping some thoughts beforehand, the strike early approach, get your comment in near the beginning.
Less pressure, maybe.
Maybe. Or finding a good way in, like building on what someone else said, or asking a really good, thoughtful question instead of just stating an opinion.
It mentions Grace, who kind of forced herself to participate more and ended up Student of the Month.
Right. And Emily, who took a different approach, wrote a note to her teacher explaining things, which actually led to more understanding, maybe some small group work where she felt more comfortable.
Even Davis, the class president guy, found he had to consciously push himself sometimes just to get the participation points.
It shows that while jumping into every discussion might not be the default mode, introverts can definitely find ways to engage effectively. It's about finding their way, not just trying to be extroverted.
But it also warns against forcing it too much, doesn't it? There was that story about the teacher with the popsicle sticks.
Oh, right. Making everyone talk a set number of times.
Yeah. And the result was, when they actually needed everyone's input for a group project, the quieter kids still held back. They hadn't actually become more comfortable sharing ideas just because they'd been forced to talk earlier.
It's such a good example of how a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really work. Real collaboration needs different styles, including that quiet thinking time, not just constant noise.
Okay, let's shift gears. Leadership. This is a really interesting section for me. The book argues that introverts can be, well, surprisingly strong leaders.
Yeah, often getting even better results than more obviously extroverted leaders. It kind of goes against the stereotype, doesn't it?
Totally. The loud, charismatic leader is the image we usually have.
But there's solid research backing this up. Adam Grant's work, for example, looking at leadership styles, and Jim Collins's studies on those top-performing companies.
The level 5 leaders.
Exactly.
Right.
Often described as modest, unassuming, quiet, but incredibly effective.
So what makes them effective, according to the book? What are those quiet leader qualities?
Well, they tend to listen really carefully. They're often better at empowering others, letting them shine. And they lead more by example, by substance, rather than just big talk.
Like Karina, who made sure the quieter people in her group got heard.
And Davis, again, being a successful class president by focusing on actual issues and observing needs, not just being the loudest candidate.
Even Eleanor Roosevelt is mentioned, her journey from being quite shy to this incredibly influential figure.
It really shows that leadership isn't about having one specific personality type. It's about understanding, connecting, facilitating, things introverts can be naturally quite good at.
Okay, what about friendships? How does introversion play out there?
The book emphasizes a preference for depth over breadth, fewer but closer, more meaningful connections, rather than a huge circle of casual friends.
That rings true. Finding more satisfaction in those deeper one-on-one chats, like Julian and Andrea's friendship in the book.
Exactly. Quality over quantity, you might say.
But there are challenges too, right? It mentions navigating difficult stuff like relational aggression.
Yeah, and how quieter kids might sometimes stay in friendships that aren't great for them, maybe out of a fear of being left alone. The example of Raj choosing the harder math class partly to get away from unsupportive friends.
That's tough. But it also gives advice for making new friends, like using those listening skills.
Asking good questions. Finding common ground. Like Haley and Davis using magic tricks or shared hobbies as an icebreaker. Simple stuff.
And it stresses communication, actually telling friends what you need, not just expecting them to guess if you're being quiet.
That's crucial. Introverts bring so much to friendships, empathy, listening, but they also need to learn to voice their own needs and boundaries clearly, finding that balance.
Okay, the classic introvert challenge, parties. Big social gatherings.
Laughs. Yeah, the energy drain.
Mm-hmm.
The book definitely gets that discomfort with loud, crowded, overstimulating places.
Like Davis preferring smaller groups, or Noah feeling lonely even when surrounded by people at a party.
That sensitivity to stimulation is key. Big, noisy events can just overload the system much faster for an introvert than for an extrovert.
But again, Quiet Power offers practical tips, coping strategies.
Definitely. Things like having a wingman or wingwoman, planning an escape route or time.
Sticking to the edges at first.
Yeah, easing in. Or creating a little bubble with just one or two people, taking breaks, stepping outside for air.
Even just deciding, okay, I'll stay half an hour longer than I feel like is a small stretch. Or hosting your own thing where you control the vibe.
It's all about managing the situation and your own energy levels, adapting without just totally sacrificing your comfort.
What about the online world? Social media. It's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Totally. The book talks about FOMO, that fear of missing out, which Lola experienced, that constant stream of other people's highlights.
Ugh, yeah. But it also highlights the good side, how it can be a tool for connecting over shared interests.
Right. Like Colby finding friends via Facebook groups for events, or Noah sharing his films on Instagram, Lola connecting with artists on Tumblr, finding your tribe online.
And interestingly, it suggests introverts' online habits often mirror their offline ones, maybe more watching than posting.
Generally, yeah. Though Noah was an exception, forming really deep friendships in online games, so it varies. But often it's about maintaining real connections or finding specific communities.
And it can be a great platform for people who aren't as comfortable speaking up physically, right? Giving them a different kind of voice.
Absolutely, a valuable space for many.
Okay, so pulling it all together. How can introverts really find their place and, thrive? Quiet Power really pushes the idea of passion.
Yes, finding something you genuinely care about is huge. It gives you focus, directs that inner energy, and can actually help you push past fear or hesitation.
That makes sense. If you care enough, you'll find the energy.
Exactly. That intrinsic motivation is powerful. It makes stepping out of your comfort zone feel worthwhile, not just scary.
And speaking of comfort zones, the book talks about stretching them gently. Like a rubber band, it says. Small, manageable steps.
Like Grace gradually participating more in class, not going from 0 to 60 overnight.
It also mentions body language, which I found interesting. How just smiling or having open posture can make you feel and seem more confident.
Yeah, that mind-body connection. Small physical shifts can impact your inner state. It's about pushing boundaries thoughtfully, purposefully.
And then, maybe the most important concept, the restorative niche.
Ah, yes, absolutely crucial.
That safe, quiet space, physical or mental, where you can just recharge, get away from the noise and stimulation.
It's your sanctuary. The book gives so many examples. Someone's bedroom, quiet reading time, being in nature, gaming, listening to music on the bus.
Gail's room, Raj reading, Tyler in nature, Noah gaming, Julie's music.
Yeah. It's not about being antisocial. It's essential self-care for introverts. You need that downtime to refill the tank. The book even gives tips on how to carve out that niche for yourself.
So ultimately, the message seems to be, embrace it. Recognize those strengths, the deep thinking, the focus, the listening, the comfort with solitude.
See them not as weaknesses, but as genuine superpowers. The book lists loads of successful introverts, actors, scientists, writers, athletes, showing it's totally possible to succeed while being true to your nature.
It's about shifting your own perspective, isn't it? From seeing quiet as a lack of something to seeing it as a source of power.
Exactly. Valuing your inherent strengths is the key.
And the book ends on this hopeful note, talking about a quiet revolution.
Yeah, this growing awareness in schools and society about introversion. People are starting to understand it better, like Mrs. French's student group researching it.
Or teachers like Mr. Ray's Donna bringing in think time before discussion.
Right. Or Mr. Yi letting students speak at their own pace. Small changes that make a big difference, creating more inclusive environments where different temperaments are valued.
And it gives advice for parents, too, doesn't it, of introverted kids?
Yes, really valuable stuff.
Wow.
Like respect their need for alone time. Let them dive deep into their interests. Understand they might only need one or two close friends, and that's okay.
Help them prepare for things like presentations, but also respect their need for that restorative niche. Don't push them constantly to be more outgoing.
That kind of understanding and support from parents is huge. It helps kids accept themselves and build confidence.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, what are the main things you hope people take away about the power of quiet?
I think the big one is that quiet isn't passive. It's a real source of strength. Introverts have unique, valuable qualities. And thriving isn't about changing who you are. It's about self-awareness, embracing your nature, and finding your own way to engage with the world.
Yeah. And understanding this isn't just for introverts, right? It helps everyone appreciate the different ways people operate.
Absolutely. Respecting different temperaments just makes everything richer, more inclusive. Schools, workplaces, friendships, families, everywhere.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. How could you consciously use your own quiet strengths? Whether you identify as an introvert or not in some part of your life, starting now. Maybe it's about carving out more time for that restorative niche, that quiet reflection, or maybe identifying a passion you want to pour that focused energy into.
That's a great question to ponder. How can you find more balance, honoring both the quiet reflection and the active engagement that life requires? Something for everyone to think about.
Well, thanks for diving deep with us today into the often hidden but very real power of quiet.